Ever wondered about the colossal size of the British Empire? A question that incites the intellect, isn't it? It's best to comprehend the immense scale of the British Empire with an old adage: the sun never sets on the British Empire. This saying illustrates a grand panorama, a testament to power and reach that extended across continents and oceans, brushing against the furthest corners of the world. Hey everyone, and welcome back to Vision Vibes. And today we're diving into the fascinating world of how big was British Empire. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out, you're in the right place to learn something new and exciting. Visualize standing atop a hill, observing the sunrise. As the golden orb ascends the horizon, it bathes the British Isles in its glow, casting a web of long shadows over the verdant countryside. The British Isles, the heart of the empire, is where the legacy begins. But as the sun continues its trek, it doesn't plunge the empire into darkness. Instead, it drifts westward, casting its radiance over the vast territories of Canada, causing the bustling cities and tranquil landscapes to gleam. From Quebec's French-speaking streets to the towering Rocky Mountains, the British Empire's signature is imprinted all over the North American landmass. As the day progresses, the sun embarks on a transatlantic journey, reaching the Caribbean islands. Here, the British Empire's dominion was marked by the sugar plantations, nurtured by the transatlantic slave trade, a dark chapter in the empire's narrative. From the bustling markets of Jamaica to the beaches of the Bahamas, the Caribbean was under the firm grasp of the empire. The sun, relentless in its path, marches further west, casting light on the diverse landscapes of Africa, from the sandy dunes of Egypt to the verdurous rainforests of the Congo. The British Empire's influence is carved deep into the history of lands, leaving a permanent imprint on their culture and identity. From the bustling bazaars of Cairo to South Africa's diamond mines, the empire's presence was inescapable. And as the sun dips below the horizon in Africa, it emerges in Australasia, casting its first rays on the bustling cities and sprawling outback of Australia, followed by the mountainous landscapes of New Zealand. From the Aboriginal cultures of Australia to the Maori traditions of New Zealand, the empire left an indelible mark. This is the crux of the phrase, "The sun never sets on the British Empire." It signifies an empire so immense, so geographically diverse, that at any given hour, the sun was illuminating a piece of British territory. But this phrase encapsulates more than just geography. It's also testament to the extensive influence of the British Empire on global politics, economics, and culture. The empire's parliamentary system, its legal frameworks, the English language, and even sports like cricket and rugby have permeated societies across the globe. An empire that has, in essence, shaped the world as we perceive it today. Now that we've stirred your interest, let's delve deeper into the history of the British Empire. The inception of the British Empire wasn't an overnight phenomenon. Rather, it was a process of gradual accumulation, beginning with small, seemingly insignificant steps. The first of these steps was planted in the early 17th century, when the English established their first permanent settlement in the New World, Jamestown, Virginia. This settlement was far from ideal, with the settlers enduring a host of challenges, from starvation and disease to hostile encounters with the native population. However, it marked the dawn of English expansion in the Americas. The colony's survival hinged on the cultivation of tobacco. John Rolfe, an English settler, introduced a new variety of tobacco that proved popular in Europe, bringing much-needed economic prosperity to Jamestown. Meanwhile, the arrival of African slaves in 1619 provided the labor needed to expand tobacco cultivation, a development which, bolstering the colony's economy, also ushered in the tragic and cruel era of the transatlantic slave trade. As the promise of wealth and a new life lured more settlers to the New World, they spread across the continent, establishing new colonies. From the rocky shores of New England to the fertile plains of the Carolinas, English territories grew. The fur trade with tribes became an important economic activity, contributing significantly to the wealth of these colonies. However, the expansion came at a cost to the indigenous populations. European diseases, against which they had no immunity, decimated native tribes, altering the balance of power and facilitating further English settlement. And the Atlantic slave trade, driven by the demand for labor in the colonies, left an indelible and devastating mark on Africa. The English weren't the only ones targeting the riches of the New World. Other European powers, Spain, France, the Netherlands, also had vested interest in these territories, resulting in inevitable conflicts. Big and small skirmishes, including the Anglo-Dutch Wars and the 7 Years' War, were fought over control of trade and territories. Through a blend of military prowess, strategic alliances, and sheer perseverance, the English emerged victorious, securing their hold on the Americas. By the close of the 17th century, the English had set up a string of colonies along the eastern seaboard of North America, groundwork of what would later become the United States. But these colonies also signified the start of British Empire's global reach. With the Americas now securely under British control, the empire's focus shifted eastward. While the Americas may have been the initial territories of the British Empire, they were far from the last. The British Empire's growth only fueled its hunger for further expansion. The subsequent chapter in the unfolding saga of the British Empire's expansion brings us to the east. Here, the British East India Company's establishment in the year 1600 marked a profound shift in the empire's priorities. The British India Company was not just a trading company, it was an institution of immense power. With its privately maintained army of British soldiers and Indian sepoys, it played a paramount role in the British Empire's spread across South Asia. The company's impact was felt across modern-day India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh, where it effectively laid the groundwork for the British Raj. The company's rule in India was a complex tapestry of political manipulation, military strength, and economic exploitation, underpinned by the controversial doctrine of lapse. Through a series of wars like the Anglo-Mysore and Anglo-Maratha Wars, and treaties such as Treaty of Allahabad, the British East India Company was able to command vast territories and populations, accumulating unparalleled wealth. Yet the empire's eastern expansion didn't stop at the Indian subcontinent. The Opium Wars of the mid-19th century saw the British Empire lock horns with China's Qing dynasty. These wars, primarily waged over the British importation of opium, culminated in a resounding British victory in the acquisition of Hong Kong under the Treaty of Nanking. Hong Kong swiftly became a coveted asset of the British Empire, with its strategic location and bustling port making it a pivotal hub for trade and commerce. The procurement of Hong Kong not only broadened the empire's territorial grasp but also amplified its economic power. Each new territory brought with it rich resources, wealth, and influence, propelling the British Empire to a peak of global dominance that few could compete with. The British Empire was morphing into more than just an expansive entity. It was developing into a global force, a titan whose influence was felt from the Americas to the remotest corners of the East. The British Empire was not merely expanding, it was solidifying its status as a global powerhouse. By the late 19th and early 20th centuries, the British Empire was at its peak, a time often referred to as the Imperial Century, when Britannia truly ruled the waves and her dominions stretched far and wide across the globe. At the height of its power, the British Empire was the largest empire in history, covering about a quarter of the Earth's total land area. To put that into perspective, that's around 14.9 million square miles of territory, a vast expanse of land and sea that spanned every continent. Key territories within this colossal empire included lands as diverse and distant as the sunburnt outback of Australia, the lush green landscapes of New Zealand, and the vast, untamed wildernesses of Canada. In Africa, Britain's influence was stamped across a plethora of regions, from the arid deserts of Egypt to the fertile highlands of Kenya, from the bustling cityscape of Cape Town to the exotic spice islands of Zanzibar. But it wasn't just the large land masses that were under British rule. There were islands scattered across the globe, each one a tiny speck of empire. These included the tropical paradises of the Caribbean, the remote Falkland Islands in the South Atlantic, and the strategic naval bases of Malta and Gibraltar in the Mediterranean. Trade, language, law, and culture flowed from this small island nation to every corner of the world, shaping and influencing societies in ways that are still evident today. The English language, the sport of cricket, the concept of the gentleman, and even the humble cup of tea, all these and more were gifts, or some might say impositions, of the British Empire. From a small island nation, Britain had grown to govern over a quarter of the world, but this was not to last. The winds of change were beginning to blow, and the sun was starting to set on the British Empire, but that, dear listeners, is a story for another day. As we've seen, the British Empire's influence was not just geographical, it permeated every aspect of life in the colonies, leaving a lasting legacy that continues to shape the modern world. From the icy coasts of Canada to the sun-drenched shores of Australia, the English language spread across the globe, becoming the lingua franca in many regions. In India, English served as a unifying language amidst a multitude of local dialects, and today it remains an official language of the country. Similarly, in Africa, English is widely spoken, bridging the gap between different ethnic groups and facilitating communication. Yet, the empire's influence extended far beyond language. British law and governance systems were implemented in the colonies, many of which are still in use today. The Indian Penal Code, for instance, was directly influenced by British law, and the parliamentary system of government in Australia and Canada echoes the British model. Economically, the empire was a powerhouse. Its policies led to the development of global trade networks that are still in operation. From the tea estates of India and Sri Lanka to the gold mines of South Africa and the rubber plantations of Malaysia, the empire's economic footprint was vast. Moreover, the empire's influence can be seen in global sports. Cricket, a game invented in England, was enthusiastically adopted in the colonies and is now a beloved sport in countries like India, Australia, and the West Indies. Indeed, the British Empire left a lasting legacy, shaping the modern world in countless ways. However, as the 20th century dawned, the winds of change began to blow across the empire. But that, as we've said, is a story for another day. As we've explored the British Empire's vast influence on its colonies, it's equally important to consider the reciprocal influence the colonies had on Britain itself. It was a cultural exchange that enriched both the empire and its colonies, a two-way street that transformed societies and shaped identities. The British Empire was not just an exporter of culture, but an importer as well. The influx of diverse cultures from the colonies greatly enriched British society. The vibrant rhythms of West African drumming, the intricate dance forms of India, the haunting melodies of Celtic music, all found their way into the cultural fabric of Britain. This melding of cultures birthed new art forms, like the Indo-Persian miniature paintings and the Afro-Caribbean music genres that continue to shape British arts and entertainment. Britain's palate, too, was transformed by its colonial encounters: Indian spices, West Indian fruits, African grains. These exotic ingredients introduced a new world of flavors to British cuisine. Curry, once a foreign dish from the Indian subcontinent, is now a staple in British households. Likewise, dishes like Jamaican jerk chicken and Nigerian jollof rice have found their place in the British culinary scene. And let's not forget the impact on language. The English language absorbed words from the myriad languages spoken across the empire. Words like bungalow from Hindi, jungle from Sanskrit, and zombie from West African languages are now integral parts of the English vocabulary. Indeed, the cultural exchange between Britain and its colonies was a two-way street, enriching both in the process. The British Empire was not just a monolithic entity imposing its culture, but a complex tapestry of diverse cultures, intricately woven together by centuries of interaction and exchange. As we transition from the empire's political and economic influence, let's delve deeper into another facet of its legacy: its cultural influence. The British Empire's cultural influence was profound and far-reaching, leaving an indelible mark on the colonies. One of the most enduring legacies of the empire was the spread of English literature and arts. From the novels of Charles Dickens to the plays of William Shakespeare, English literature found a receptive audience in the colonies. Libraries and schools across the empire promoted English literature, fostering a love for these works that endures to this day. Moreover, the British also introduced Western art forms like painting and sculpture to their colonies, influencing local art scenes and creating a unique blend of Eastern and Western aesthetics. In addition to literature and arts, the British Empire also introduced new sports to the colonies. Cricket and rugby, quintessentially British games, were enthusiastically adopted in the colonies. These sports not only served as a form of entertainment, but also became a symbol of colonial identity. Today, cricket is a national obsession in countries like India, Pakistan, and Australia, and rugby is a beloved sport in places such as South Africa and New Zealand. Food, an integral part of any culture, was not left untouched by the empire's influence. British cuisine, with its hearty stews, roasts, and puddings, found its way into the culinary traditions of the colonies. In India, the British penchant for tea led to the establishment of vast tea plantations, and afternoon tea became a customary practice. In places like Hong Kong and Singapore, colonial-era dishes like curry puffs and egg tarts are still popular today. The cultural legacy of the British Empire is still evident in many parts of the world today, a testament to its enduring influence. As we move forward, we'll see how this empire, once so mighty, began to crumble under the weight of its own ambitions and the growing call for independence. All empires rise and all empires fall. The British Empire was no exception. As the echoes of World War II fell silent, a new sound began to ring out across the territories of the British Empire: the call for independence. The empire had been strained by the war, its resources depleted and its international standing diminished. The stage was set for a significant transformation. In India, the clamor for freedom became impossible to ignore. Under the leadership of figures such as Mahatma Gandhi, the country united in a peaceful struggle for independence. After decades of colonial rule, India finally gained its sovereignty in August of 1947. A clear indication that the sun had indeed started setting on the British Empire. Meanwhile, across the vast continent of Africa, a similar story was unfolding. From the Gold Coast to Kenya, from Nigeria to South Africa, nations were beginning to assert their autonomy. The winds of change were blowing, and by the early 60s, most African colonies had secured their independence, marking yet another chapter in the decline of the British Empire. The Caribbean was not to be left behind. In the wake of India and Africa, nations like Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, and Barbados also embarked on their journeys towards self-governance, further hastening the sunset of the empire. But the end of the empire was not the end of Britain's global influence. As the sun set on the British Empire, the Commonwealth of Nations rose from its ashes. This political association of 54 member states, nearly all of which are former territories of the British Empire, continues to foster international cooperation and goodwill, echoing the empire's past influence. The British Empire, once the largest empire in history, covering a quarter of the globe's landmass, gradually faded into the annals of history. Its legacy, however, is far from forgotten. The sun may have set on the British Empire, but its influence remains evident in the world we live in today. That's all for today, folks. Remember to keep practicing, keep exploring, and keep pushing your limits. Until next time, take care and be happy. How big was British Empire? And finally, I want to thank each and every one of you for tuning in. Your support and engagement mean the world to us. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing for more content like this.